Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. You have stepped into a course that is going to change the way that you look at data. Not just how you analyze it, but also how you communicate it. My name is Nivid Desai. I serve as the Program Executive at Writing Studio IIT Gandhinagar. Welcome to Writing for Data Science. This course is at the intersection of analysis and communication. As all of us know, data analysis is not just about coding and models. It is about solving real-world problems. And that is exactly why every single thought that goes into solving those problems needs to be communicated. And not just to one audience, across multiple stakeholders. That is where this course comes in. This course prepares you with the foundations of writing, especially curated for data science. We will discuss audience analysis, critical thinking, logical reasoning, as well as storytelling that is native to data science. So join me on a journey at the intersection of numbers and narratives. I'll see you in class. Namaste, hello and welcome to Writing for Data Science. My name is Nivid Desai and we are on a journey to explore the interesting intersections between numbers and narratives. In the last class, we looked at some strategies and approaches which will help us treat writing as a process within the realm of data science. Now in this class, we are going to build on that conversation and look at practical implementations of those strategies and approaches in order for us to become effective data science writers. Let me tell you a little bit about how today's class is going to proceed. For each of the strategies and approaches, I will give you a scenario to imagine. That scenario will be a practical situation likely to come up within the realm of data science professionals' lives. After the scenario is done, we will look at some examples that will be resulting from those scenarios. And after each result discussion, I will leave you with a thought experiment at the end of each strategy and approach for you to consider how to treat each strategy and approach differently. I would welcome all of you to draw in references, inferences, and experiences from your professional or academic journeys within data science. I'm sure that you would have relevant things to remember, recall, and apply to our conversation today. So, without further ado, let's begin. Before we move forward, let us first revise what those key approaches were to writing process in data science. We discussed first, start with the end in mind. We called it the outcome-driven writing approach. Then we discussed about adopting a first principles approach. We learned what first principles are and how to employ them when we are writing within data science. Then we talked about the art and craft of iterative writing and revision, how writing evolves from draft after draft to turn into its final form, accommodating feedback and all kinds of reviews. Then we moved on to discussing how to emphasize reader-centric writing, writing that puts the reader as the priority in designing the entire communication approach. And in the end, we talked about engaging in data storytelling with a logical flow. We discovered how narrative elements play into designing communication for data and how that turns into a logically coherent story for our readers to understand data insights from. Like I said, each approach will have a scenario for you to imagine, results to discuss, and then thought experiments to ponder about. Let's begin. The first approach, start with the end in mind, the outcome driven writing approach. Here is the scenario for you. A data scientist is writing a report on customer churn analysis for a telecommunications company. The primary objective is to reduce the churn by identifying patterns in customer behavior. Think about it. What kind of writing will you do if you keep the end in mind, the outcome in mind, while designing such a communication? Let's look at what the initial draft would look like without the outcome in mind. The initial draft would have the report start with a detailed explanation of the algorithms which are used, followed by pages of graphs and data tables with the recommendations buried at the end. I'm sure you understand how this can be counterproductive, because in the end, the purpose, the end of writing this document is to derive insights, is to recommend certain strategic steps to retain customers. So what do? We revise the draft with the outcome in mind, with the end in mind. Now the report opens with an executive summary that highlights the key insights. Let's say, for example, customers using certain plans are more likely to churn, and actionable recommendations. For example, targeted promotional offers. All of these will help the executives get a firm understanding of what to do and how, and also, most importantly, why. Technical details of the analysis are moved to later sections. So, in case somebody wants to see the technical viability of these conclusions, they are free to refer to them in their own leisure according to their own needs. But they don't have to compulsorily wade through all of that detail to then arrive at what they're actually looking for. So, to have some empathy with the reader, let's start with the end in the mind. This is what we call outcome-driven writing, because the outcome is prioritized. The outcome is, so to say, put in spotlight. Here's a thought experiment for you. You have completed a data analysis project for a retail company, identifying that sales promotions during winter months increase overall revenue by 20%. However, promotions targeting electronics lead to an inventory shortage and customer complaints. What are the primary outcomes that you want the reader, which would be an executive, to take from the report and ensure that the summary reflects that goal? This would be a scenario in which you would need to implement an outcome-driven approach. You would need to start with the end in mind. Think about it, draw out some outline, and I will get back to you with the second approach and its own scenario. Now let's arrive at the second approach, adopting a first principles approach. Here's your scenario. You're explaining a complex machine learning algorithm, let's say random forest, to a non-technical team. The contrast is quite clear. They are a non-technical team who have utility of the complex machine learning algorithm, which is random forest, for example. However, they won't have the necessary technical knowledge to understand the complexities of random forest. What shall we do? What kind of a first principles approach would help us connect with them at a communicative level? Let's see what the approach would be like without first principles first. The explanation starts by describing decision trees and ensemble methods using a lot of jargon like overfitting, gene impurity, and bagging. These words would definitely not be in the vocabulary of the respective non technical team members. So, it definitely would be difficult for them to understand what is going on and the clarity of message that you want to deliver. This in turn will lead to misinterpretation, misunderstanding, and resultantly miscommunication. So, how to avoid that? Let's look at using first principles. This compels you to start by explaining a decision tree as a series of yes no questions that guide you to a decision. See, this is a concept, this is movement, this is something that the non technical team members will be able to easily grok without relying on any kind of jargon. Then you explain how a random forest is a group of decision trees working together to improve accuracy and reduce mistakes. If you look at this very closely, you would realize that we are not going into too much depth about how the decision tree works. We instead emphasize why does it work? What purpose does it serve? That is quite clear. Improving accuracy and reducing mistakes. That purpose, that utility is something that the non-technical team members would be more concerned with. That is why adopting a first principles approach helps us connect with somebody who may not speak the technical language. Here's the thought experiment for you. Break down a data science concept of your choice using first principles thinking. Ensure that the explanation builds up logically from the simplest components. And also keep in mind that if they are not interested in technical intricacies, do not trap them in them. Now comes the third approach, iterative writing and revision. This is key to data science writing. However, I would also like to emphasize that all kinds of writing, the professional kind, the personal kind, the creative kind, the formal kind, all of them will benefit from the iterative writing process. However, let's come back to data science. Here's your scenario. A team is developing a technical report on fraud detection in banking. They write a detailed methodology section explaining the use of neural networks, but receive feedback that the section is too technical for the compliance team to understand. See, the compliance team are not technical audiences. They have use of your methodology, they have use of your output, but they may not understand the intricacies of that methodology. You have put in too much detail. You have explained the use of neural networks and how they function. But neither is the compliance team interested in it, nor are they competent to understand it. This is what, this is what would happen. The initial draft before the revision would read something like this. The model uses a neural network with back propagation to detect anomalies in the transaction dataset. You see the jargon heaviness, right? The non-technical members would either be confused, baffled, or averted from this kind of language. After the feedback and revision, this is what it can evolve into, an improved version. We used a machine learning model to identify unusual patterns in transaction data. This method allows the system to learn from past fraud cases and improve its detection accuracy over time. If you look at this clearly, the purpose of the method has been made clear. The utility of the method has been made clear. There is no diving deep into how the method works. because that is not something that the compliance team will be interested in and nor, like I said, competent to understand. Here's a thought experiment for you. Depending on the edits, what can you deduce about the target audiences of both versions? I've shown you the two versions on the screen right now. What do you think would be the assumptions that can be made about the target audiences? This development of a muscle to anticipate the versions of audiences will be useful for us later into the course in multiple different contexts. So, from now on, it is important that we develop this habit of anticipating the expectations of audiences based on the writing that is in front of us. Now, let's come to the next approach, emphasizing audience centered writing or reader centric writing. Here's your scenario. You're writing a policy document on data privacy compliance for two different audiences, the legal team and the IT team. You must understand that one of them is a technical audience, one of them is a non technical audience. What do these two mean? We will discuss in much more detail following up in the course. But for now, intuitively, let us try to gauge what the difference between a legal communication and an IT communication would be. For the legal team, the writing can look something like this. The document focuses on legal obligations, citing specific regulations and compliance requirements. Again, because those are the criteria that the legal team would be most concerned with. And for the IT team, the document would include technical instructions on how to anonymize and secure customer data to meet compliance standards. That is what the IT team would be concerned with, the how of implementation. The legal team would be more preoccupied with the legal prerequisites and the parameters of implementation. Now, let us look at the thought experiment. What are the key differences between the two versions? What do you think you can imagine as the two different versions being? How would you see them being different in implementation? When one implements these kinds of writing and communication strategies, how differently do you think they would shape out? Make some notes for yourself, and I will come back with the last approach in our list. The last approach in our list is to engage in data storytelling with a logical flow. This is the narrative angle, coupled with the numbers. Let's look at the scenario. A data scientist is presenting the results of a customer segmentation analysis to the marketing team. If you look at this closely, the data scientist is the technical audience and the marketing team is the non-technical audience. The marketing team, of course, would be more concerned with the narrative around the numbers, the stories that they can tell about the customer segmentation analysis, or alternatively, the stories that they can build out of the insights that you share with them. They understand the language of stories. They prefer the language of stories. So, without storytelling, if you do not keep the storytelling aspect in mind, your presentation as the data scientist would jump straight into the technical details of clustering algorithms and distance metrics, confusing the audience. However, with storytelling, by adhering to the kind of language that the marketing team is more attuned to, the presentation starts by framing the problem, which would be improving targeted marketing efforts. Then you would introduce the concept of customer segmentation. And the presentation shows how the findings can help the marketing team create personalized campaigns for each segment. This is the logical flow. This is the story behind your insights. So here's a thought experiment. What can be a popular real life example of this scenario? What do you think? What kind of marketing have you seen? What kind of data presentations have you made in which a storytelling angle can be prominently noticed? Think about the advertisements, think about the campaigns, think about the kind of appeals that you see being made day in and day out in public life. Those will be the examples of storytelling within data. As we move towards the conclusion of today's entire discussion, let me share some summarizing final thoughts with you. To start with the end in mind, what we know as outcome driven writing, the key aspect to keep in mind is that clarity of purpose drives impactful communication. You must define your key takeaway even before you put pen to paper, or I mean words on your screen. And every section should contribute to your main message. In no way should your main message be made obscure, be made more confusing by the jumbled details of your writing. If you are adopting a first principles approach, you must break complexity into its simplest forms. Avoid jargon, especially when talking to a non-technical audience. Explain concepts from the ground up, ensuring that even a non-expert can follow. And trust me, it may sound difficult, but it is possible with enough thoughts pooling into a first principles approach. Moving on, iterative writing in revision teaches us that good writing is rewriting. Almost all writing is rewriting. Once you draft quickly, you are free to edit relentlessly. While editing, you should focus on clarity, structure, and conciseness in each revision. Then we come to the key aspect of emphasizing reader-centric writing. While we are professional communicators, we are writing for our audiences, not for ourselves. So, it behooves us that we understand our readers' level of expertise and expectations. How much do they understand, and what do they want to understand? Both of them are important drivers of designing our communication. While doing so, you must adapt your tone and depth according to the configuration of your audiences. And in the end, while we are engaging in data storytelling with a logical flow, we must remember that numbers tell stories. So, it is our job to make them compelling. We must structure our insights like a narrative. Set the context, highlight the problem, present data-driven solutions, and conclude with actionable insights. Remember, writing in data science is more than reporting facts. It is about influencing decisions through clarity, precision, and compelling storytelling. So that was it from my end for this lecture. With this, we conclude the introductory module of our wonderful Writing in Data Science journey. From the next lecture onwards, we will dive deep into audience analysis, the different fragments, the different components that come together to build our understanding for the people whom we are writing for. I look forward to seeing you in the next class. Until then, stay curious and keep learning. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaskar.